News of Chrissie Marr's campaigning rippled forth as far as the corridors of power in London. She was recruited to join a new organisation that promised to listen to ordinary people. But if they thought she would be just a token working-class woman who knew her place, they had another thing coming.
Well, Chrissie was a member of the National Consumer Council, the first Consumer Council, and I remember her in the first meeting. She made quite an impact, complaining about some of the papers that in fact had been produced for the meeting and saying she couldn't understand them.
So well, somebody came, I'm not a committee woman, I don't understand constitution and agendas, and they came to me and said, we serve on this committee down in London, you know, and why do you want me? You know, I'm just Chrissie Marr here, you know, why do you want me? And they said, well, because you can bring the problems of the grassroots onto a national platform. Do you realise what that could do for the grassroots?
Well, Chrissie had quite a lot of experience with adult literacy issues and developing the Two-Book Bugle and the newspaper in Liverpool for people who found it difficult to read. And so she had a lot of insight into the problems that ordinary people were having in dealing with official forms and leaflets.
And of course, it was great because they started talking to me, you know, and said to me, look, you could bring all these things that you're upset about onto this national platform, and you've got to, you know, MPs will have an ear to it and you'll be able to talk. Oh, that was all I needed. It was down, you know, but that was hard because, I mean, 11 of the, I would think of the sort of 13 people that were there were very posh. They were ladies and lords and that type of calibre of people, really, that spoke a different language to me entirely.
And one of the Chrissie's brilliant ideas was to develop a small supermarket in Salford, which she called a form market, in which instead of there being, you know, onions and potatoes around, there were forms, and people were asked to pick up forms that were relevant to them, and if they didn't understand them, they could go to the checkout and say, I don't understand this, can you explain it to me? And they did, and it was very successful.
Well, I decided that there was only one way we were going to do it, and that was to bring the problems to the House of Parliament. But we knew there'd be coppers out there, and we knew we'd get locked up, right? So me and Caggy have a talk with a couple of mates of ours. They were all there together. There's about 4 or 5 of us. And we all sat there and decided what to do. And I said, no, all we need is an empty van. We'll collect cardboard boxes. We'll decorate them like you do Christmas presents, you know, thing. And we'll pretend they're very heavy, and we'll take them across. Because I want to bring the message home to the MPs that's in Parliament that what they're doing is criminal, because they're putting in all these fancy words, you know, which were in forms, leaflets and agreements, which we can understand. Well,
Chrissie had this idea that she would put on a demonstration in Parliament Square. I was very nervous about it because you know, the police are very hot on people who seem to be hanging around in Parliament Square. But Chrissie borrowed I think it was a wallpapering table. She also borrowed from me in my office a shredder. I lent her it without really thinking seriously about it, and until afterwards, when I told my boss that we'd lent them, and he was furious with me. So we could have got involved, whatever.
And John Ward, bless him, he put us up in his house. Oh, not his big posh house in London. Oh, bless him. He did. Put us all up, and the van stayed outside. This scruffy van, which we'd hired, with all the boxes, and he was terrified for me because he kept saying, oh, Chris, you're going to get locked up. Oh, Chris, you're going to get locked up. Because, I mean, he'd known me about 3 years then on the NCC, because he was a director on the NCC, John Wood. And he'd said, oh, I'd fear for you. Oh, you know, and he was a nervous wreck. Anyway, we got into the van this morning, and I kept directing, no, put the box there, and I could see the police were started to talk to one another. You know, this thing where they do this business.
Chrissie just had the opportunity because a policeman came up to her and said, sort of, here, you can't do that here. And she said, why?
And it was scary, honestly, because when you're poor, you don't get the wrong side of the law, because you know what's going to happen. You know, they're going to give you a clipper on the hole and throw you behind bars, you know. So you don't get the wrong side of the law. So he came over and he said, I'm afraid we're going to have to move you on. And I said, well, they haven't come out yet. We're waiting for the MPs to come out for the lunch. I honestly thought, how naive can you get to come out for the lunch, you know? Waiting for them to come out for the lunch like they do out of a factory. And he said, they're not going to come out, love. I'm going to have to move you on. I said, well, you know, what tells you that you've got to move me on? He said, well, I'll read you. And he read me the Riot Act. Well, It was, honestly, it was about 150 words of sheer gibberish.
And he said, according to the Act of Parliament in 1921 or whatever it was, you are not supposed to do this. And she had all the media were around her watching this, and this was gobbledygook coming from the policeman. But the policeman, fortunately, saw the humour of it and didn't overreact. But it was very effective. That was the first real big breakthrough.
We'd sort of thought, well, what do we do here? And then suddenly pressmen came from behind trees. And I couldn't believe it. They came from behind benches. And they were like rats coming out all corners. And suddenly there was all these cameras. But that's even more scary then. Because it's scary. It is scary. The press is scary. You know, and they seemed to think it was very significant. I didn't catch on at first that this Bobby had to tell me in total jargon. And all as I said to him, does all that mean that we've got to go? And I meant it. I didn't understand it. That was it. They all fell about laughing. I thought, here we go again. They were all laughing, and that really was the start of the Plain English campaign. I mean, the audacity of taking stuff down to Parliament Square, the guts that it takes, but the cheek, you know. And then they started to take some notice.
She's given the consumers, and I mean that very widely, a feeling of confidence in complaining when something is beyond them, they don't understand. They feel ready to say, I don't understand this, can you use plain English? And that confidence has, I think, become almost a national thing. People are much more ready to deal with bureaucratic bullies than they used to be.
But it all comes from here, the heart. It's a passion that she's had, that people get information and then have the ability to make choices and decisions based on proper information. And that's what's driven her. I mean, for somebody to be driven so long to do so much, you can only imagine how much passion she's got inside of her and how much it matters to her.